Hi, and welcome back to We Take the Stairs. We are doing another one of our little side quest episodes of Let's Break Bread. You'll notice that the studio is a little bit different today. We are in New York City, and we're joined by some really wonderful people who we will introduce in just a moment, but there is bread. I didn't lovingly make it this time, but the bakery next door did provide it, and it's absolutely wonderful. And so I'm just gonna kick it off, and there's not going to be any kind of introduction today. We're just going to dive right in. Today's episode, as you guys, we've been speaking a little bit about it, is going to be about communication. So we just are on a break between seasons 1 and 2, and we decided we needed to dive in a little bit more to a few different subjects. So this is our third episode of Let's Break Bread, and we want to discuss specifically the divide between men and women and the communication between them, because we're seeing huge breakdowns of communication, but not just that, just respectful communication in general. So we don't have any prompts. None of this is rehearsed. It's just an organic conversation, and we want to just talk to people all over the country if we can, because we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse of what's real. So if you don't mind, we'll start with you. Just introduce yourself. Let us just a little bit about you.
So my name's Trey. I am a content creator and fitness coach here in the city. Been here for about 7-8 years now. I came up initially from college, played football in college. I come from a small suburb in Jacksonville, Florida. So it took me a little while to get used to the weather here, but I'm not yet accustomed to it yet, but we're still here, though. We love the city. But yeah, super excited to have this conversation.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. I'm Rachel.
Junior, you know me.
And I'm Haley. Nice to meet you. I run an agency called Additive. You're in the space today. Really excited to be here. We focus on organizations that are doing good things in the world. So we only work with organizations that are advancing education or health or community benefits. It's really important to us. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about communicating to drive positive actions. You may notice a slight accent. I'm from Durban, South Africa originally. So I think I can definitely talk about the complexity of communications. We have 11 official languages. And so finding common ground is what I think about a lot. Nice to see you guys.
Thank you for providing this space. It's absolutely fantastic. It's so cool and industrial, but still warm at the same time. That's not easy to do, I just say. So we'll just dive right in. What was interesting is just upon entering the building, we saw some interesting communication. And, I think that's why we're doing this, right, Junior? Because we want to make sure that if we can shed a little light and start to see small sparks of hope and people communicating well, then bridges can be built, as opposed to this breakdown of society that unfortunately I keep seeing. So I guess we can just sort of talk about maybe the experiences. We were having some great conversation before we started to record, and some of the things I think that we were touching on were really amazing. And I think that the most important thing that we're forgetting just as human beings is that we all sort of want the same thing, right? Like, we want respect, we want understanding. And for some reason, we're not living that truth. And I think what I really just feel like I'd like to understand what's going wrong, where that's going wrong. And you have a very interesting job. You really get to see some very different aspects as somebody who deals with branding and trends and what people like or don't like. And I'm sure that has really, really changed over your time in this profession. So I think that to maybe hear about that might be really fascinating. What kind of trends have you seen that are?
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing for us as communicators is actually frame and word choice. Everything's gotten really polarizing. Yeah. So that's become really difficult. Now, I think I've been doing this for over 2 decades. it's just like you have to be so careful about what you say. And one of the things I've found in the spirit of being productive and positive today about finding paths forward is I think if you start with a frame that's too narrow and people don't see themselves in it, they shut down. So one of the things I've been spending a lot of time thinking about that I found to be the most effective given, whatever your political beliefs, but given, the executive orders and what language you can and cannot say, or people who perceive others to be woke or whatever language they use, is you got to transcend all of that and actually find language that can bring as many people to the table as possible. That's unifying. Then you can create more narrow pathways to take discrete actions. But if you start with very narrow framing or very narrow pathways to engagement, you just create more and more echo chambers. So that's one of the things I found, given how tumultuous and volatile and polarized we are, to be a really effective strategy. And that's hard for a lot of people who have a very specific point of view because they just want to keep communicating their point of view. Yeah. But you'll never, ever change hearts' minds if you don't actually have conversations.
Where do you think that derived from the reality of us? And you said something so profound in that if we don't see ourselves in the frame, we shut down.
Yes.
Where do you think that derived from, where we're not taught to engage in things that we don't see ourselves in? Because if we do essentially want the same thing in life, we should be able to open up the frame to want to understand other people and differences in order for us to actually come to a table. Because what happens is once the frame is so closed, then we're only coming to our own table.
Yes.
And it doesn't leave room for us to actually have a bigger table to invite other people in.
That I think is the fundamental point, which is I think there are universal truths, right? We all want to love. No one wants to see someone, die. No, there are universal truths, and I think we've forgotten to start with what binds us all together, irrespective of our faith, our background, our country of origin, who we love, whatever it may be. There are things that bind us together, and I think we've forgotten that. And to your point, what we've done is we created a table for one. I really liked your table metaphor, and I think that's, in some ways, the power of this is us getting together and having a human conversation. Because again, I think we've just become so self-directed, and I don't think it's an either or. That's another point. I think to your ask on trends, I think 2008 to 2010, if you were a communicator, and the backdrop was yes we can, and everything was about we, right? Yeah. I think what happened from a communication standpoint is it swung so far to we. Right? And that's counter to human behavior. You need to see benefit to self and society. Now we've swung to the other extreme. It's all about me. And I think we got to recalibrate to even something you were saying before, right to the middle, where I can see myself, but I belong to something bigger than self.
Yeah.
And that is the table, the bigger table. But that starts with shared truths, things that we all believe. And then you can get into sort of what your unique faith is or your unique. But I think when we start there, we cut off everyone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think the real culprit of it, and you were kind of hinting to it, is we live in an era of confirmation bias, meaning that I can literally, whatever stance that I want to believe, and now it starts with my belief, and I can go out and I can find a source to confirm whatever I believe.
Absolutely. There's algorithms based on what we
literally
look
designed to feed
So
you.
we think that we're right. We're listening to people that think that we're right, and we're forgetting. And to the table of one, that's a lonely table.
Very lonely.
And to sit at a table of people who only think like you is creating a very monotone and very Brave New World society. I reference that book all the time, and it's we're just walking towards it, and it's unbelievable to me that we're walking into it like this.
I would love for you to dig a little deeper into that side of what you were saying, because there's so much truth there, and we've talked about this on the podcast where things are swaying to a point where it's regurgitating the ideas and the thoughts that we have. and no longer are things original, right? It's the one thing we think that can be expounded upon and confirmed by whether it's AI, whether it's Google, whether it's what our algorithm is feeding us. So I would love for you to expand upon that to just to hear what else could come out of what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, because you can literally submit your beliefs, and like because you can submit your beliefs, it also makes it to the point where anything like outside of that, not only like we can't deal with the discomfort of necessarily hearing something that we have already cemented within us as the truth. And I think it used to be like you said, we were able to have conversations with people that we disagree with, and it's like we still can see each other as people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But now we're in a day and age where like that belief is now so driven into our core that really anything outside of that, like outside of that confirmation that I have, is an enemy. And it's like now it's almost like getting to a point like, and I feel like it's driven heavily from the political climate. But it's like an all or nothing, like a zero sum, to where it's anything, it's black and white. It's anything on that side is not only wrong, it's like it's evil. Like those are the people that we are fighting. And the funny part is I feel like on both sides, like everyone is fighting for that same thing, like the core thing that we all want as humans. Like we're fighting for it, the same thing. And in a weird way, it's making it even harder, is because I feel like humans need something, like you need something to kind of go against to give extra meaning to whatever you do support.
Sure. There's always been unity in
Exactly.
like during war, let's say.
Yeah.
People come together during a time where they're fighting for something. And if you notice, even if you break down that even further in a different idea, let's say like communities where there's extreme cold, they're the closest knit communities. They help each other, they know each other. And then like, for example, in South Florida in general, like I barely know my neighbors.
Yes.
So when there's difficulty or there's hardship, people seem to unite. But for some reason, I don't really know what happened. Again, I'm going to reference COVID, but around 2020, we started to look at each other differently. And hardship,
I think we just didn't even look at each other.
Yeah, like avoid at all costs. Isolation for sure.
we started to see each other as this person could hurt me. Doesn't matter who it is, if you're breathing in the room as me. And I'm not sure we graduated past that. I think everybody's kind of stuck. And now we have people telling us through all kinds of media, not just like the news or social media. We have, no matter what we're looking at in general on our phone, it's reading us so well that it's pitting people against each other. And on each side, because there's humans, there's wonderful people, and each side there's people who maybe are not so wonderful, but we only see, like you're saying, what we want to see and what you think is wrong. And that's just not the way a society is built. That is actually how it crumbles.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about the COVID point a lot, because I think that was the turning point where everything kind of really fell apart. And I think it's the power of human connections. I said it earlier, but I was running in Prospect Park. There was a guy running with his arms out, like everyone was, 6 feet, stay away. He literally did a loop around the park with his hands out the entire time. You must have good for the fitness folks. Good. But it was like it was a metaphor. I thought to like kind of what happened, which is because especially for the kids who weren't in school, everything got redirected to a phone, right? As opposed to actually looking up. We all started looking down. And that's where I think we accelerated the breakdown of interpersonal communications. Yeah. And I'll always think of that guy, because I'm like, that was like the beginning. It was like literally his hands were up like this. And I thought to myself, that's what accelerated, especially for young people who kind of grew up and had sort of concentrated or heightened sort of engagement with a machine versus learning how to communicate, understanding nuance. Because I think everything we're talking about is it's a world where it's a both and, right? You have to understand nuance. Like, why is someone behaving the way they do? If you don't ask questions, You just see the response, not what actually drove the response. But we're not taking time to understand that anymore. And I think that is what makes me really sad, you know?
Yeah.
I love that you are reiterating all the things that we tried to flesh out on the initial podcast. This is like a confirmation, and not confirmations confirm. But this is like the confirmation to say that we are definitely like having genuine conversation about the real issues. Two things that I was pinged on just from your conversation and yours as well. I want to start with yours with regards to, I think everyone is running like this now.
I think they are. They are.
If we were to close our eyes and looking at it in a maybe just like a spiritual lens, I feel like everyone is running like this.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that happened in COVID that might have caused that is that we realized how close people were to us, how much we've exposed ourselves to a lot of people. And that sort of got scary when we can't even sit with ourselves.
Yeah.
Because in COVID, we were all trying to reach for a community. We were all trying to get back something. We went into relationships that we didn't need to get into because of this starvation of wanting a connection. So I feel like that, yes, that has created us all running like this because we've come to an understanding of how close people are to us. And then to re-let them back in, it's kind of scary.
That's exactly what it
oh my God, like, why are you so close? This is like, I feel like you're going to get me sick because now I have to really expose myself. I have to get naked in front of you now, when for a long time I've had to sit with myself. To your point that I got pinged with is there's a reality that I learned to deal with in myself. If it is that I'm looking for confirmation, it means that I'm not being honest with myself. If I'm running to someone else to kind of like confirm for me what I feel and believe, then there's something that I'm not honest with. Do you guys think that there's a lot of the world that we don't know how to sit with the truth of ourselves? Because bad is bad. And we all want to feel like we're inherently good people.
Yeah.
And we can't face the fact that there are some things that we just do that we know are bad. So for us to think that we're good and getting the confirmation from all over, it makes us feel so much better. So two things. Do you really truly believe that it is because we're so fearful of people getting so close to us, why we're all running like this? And do you think that there's a large part of the world that isn't truly honest with themselves, which is why we're seeking confirmation from outside source?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like I definitely feel like that, like, especially in this day and age too, I feel like it all plays a part in terms of just discomfort as a whole. Like we are in our day-to-day life, like you even think with the advancement of AI, like AI is literally designed to where we are trying to minimize our ability to feel anything like uncomfortable that we don't want to feel. Like thinking within interpersonal like relations, if I'm talking to somebody and it's like, if I don't agree with what you're saying, like it's so easy for me now to where I can literally shut you out and I can go to my phone. Like, and that's the initial reaction for most people. Like, it's just I feel like that discomfort because now we live in a day and age where you don't have to sit in that discomfort.
Have to deal with it.
So now it's very hard to tell somebody to willfully put myself in an uncomfortable position when human nature in general, like you're designed to look for the easiest path. You're designed to look for the path of least resistance. So it's like, it's definitely an uphill battle. I feel like that we're fighting in this day and age, just because it genuinely, like you're going to have to force yourself to do that. And on the opposite end, it's just so easy to just fall back into the norm, because that today the norm is to alleviate discomfort by any means.
That's interesting. So basically the root of the real issue is fear. And I don't know if you've historically, I mean, I read a lot and I studied quite a lot of history. I was one of those people in college who decided to take my electives as like history electives. And so I learned quite a lot, but I also was very obsessed with like periods of time where people would be so brainwashed that they would commit such atrocious acts and feel justified in them. And do you know what the root of that all is? Fear. Fear of some kind. Because let's say you're like going and you're like running at the edge of the cliff, and then all of a sudden you almost fall and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to stop running here. Fear.
Yeah.
That is the most like primal instinct that people can't feel. And so feelings become fearful. Associating with other people becomes a fearful thing. And whoever has the power to control fear in human beings controls the people. And until we're able to realize that you have to sit with yourself and put this down and get into those uncomfortable spaces and understand that really, like, even if we're different, there's not that much difference between us. We may have different cultures, we may have different genders, we may have different beliefs on something, but at the end of the day, don't you just want to be seen and loved? Don't you just want to belong to a group of people who see you? Don't you just want your home to feel comfortable? So when we realize that that is the base of all human beings and what they want, we can put the fear down. Vulnerability is really hard. It's something that's fearful, because showing people who we really are, which, I'm sorry, people on social media are not really showing people who they really are. They're showing you what they want you to see. And we were talking to that point. But that's not real. Real gets difficult. Real is sitting with your spouse or your child who might be having a difficult time or might be going through a trauma or might be ill, and being there. I know a family whose daughter has pediatric cancer and has had for many years, and the number of people who kind of smile but walk away have been unbelievably numerous. And the number of people who stood there and just sat with them in that space have been less than they anticipated. And it's because of fear. People are scared of what they don't know, or people are scared that it might happen to them. But at the end of the day, everybody needs understanding and connection. And when you can build the bridge to understanding connection, to your point from earlier before we started to record, then we can get somewhere. When we realize that we need each other, then you can get somewhere. And so Junior and I are really invested in trying to help people understand that we do need each other, and we are really all in this together.
I think fear unchecked leads to hate, and that is, I think, the biggest enemy.
Yep.
I think
Fear unchecked leads to hate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we were in the other room, you'd see, obviously, a very famous Nelson Mandela quote about, obviously love and hate. And I think people are taught to hate. And I think fear is controlled by these devices we're talking about. It's intentionally designed to make us fearful of what we don't know, fearful of people we don't understand, as opposed to having some of these conversations and learning that actually, you may be from Jacksonville and I may be from Durban, but we actually have a lot of like
Commonalities for sure.
commonalities. I think one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is, how do you combat fear? And how do you combat polarization or starting from very different places? And one of the things I found to be very effective is to ask questions, right? So I'm going to take climate change for an example. Just, we can pick any topic, but I know someone very well who believes climate change science is alarmist, doesn't believe it exists, but is a proponent of nuclear energy. I promise I won't get too in the weeds on this. The point is, one of the things I always do when we're having a conversation is, I'm like, do you believe we should all like have clean air? What about drinking water, right? And yes. Okay, well, your path may be like investing in nuclear energy, and my path may be a more diversified strategy, but we both agree we want clean air, and we want to have water that isn't like the water in Flint, Michigan, right? We want to have water we can drink that isn't filled with carcinogenics, et cetera. And then you can have a more productive conversation versus starting the conversation with nuclear is the only way to power cities, and another conversation being like, well, I think we should invest in solar, wind, and whatever else, right? So I think it sort of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is maybe it starts with asking questions that can get beyond the fear, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is identify what we share. Because I think, there's a reason that cities, the coasts, right, near the ports, they're more diverse, right? Because you inherently have people flying in. And by talking to people who are different from you, you actually understand and can empathize with people that maybe aren't exactly like you, but you're just exposed to more. And that exposure, I think, is why we see differences. And the same is true in South Africa, the coasts, also the ports versus the interior of the country. And it's not good or bad. It's just your views are changed the more you interact with people who aren't exactly like you, but actually share love, a sense of belonging, et cetera, et cetera. And that's, I think, going to be what saves us all. The best thing, I think, is actually taking, I can't really afford them, but having conversations with Uber drivers is actually the most awesome thing. I get to talk to someone and understand about Georgia, the country, not the state. I get to understand like Uzbekistan, or I get to learn about things from all over the world, and that's awesome. And we get to connect, right, for that 15 minutes or 30 minutes, or if it's a lot of traffic, an hour. But that, I think, is like someone I never would have interacted with, and I got to know someone. I think that's cool.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, over this summer, I was a month and a half in Europe with my younger son. And actually, it was a lot. Obviously, I wanted to be with my younger son, David, but a lot of it was for research, because before I started the podcast, I didn't just want to know what Americans, were talking by watching. I wanted to get immersed in the culture of humanity. And so it didn't hurt to travel. But every time I took a taxi, and I remember a number of those rides, and they were so informative. And of course, London is my favorite place to take a taxi. I mean, it just really is. And I remember when we first arrived, there was a young man who picked us up, and I just was like, how are you today? And he just looked back at me like this. He was like, fine, how are you? And we just struck up a conversation, and it takes quite a while to get from London Heathrow into the city. And by the end of it, we had just ended up talking about so many different things. And he said, you know what? You're the first person I've talked to in such a long time. And it's so interesting because obviously we're different people and we're culturally different. But the fact that you just were talking to me, I guarantee you nobody else is going to have a conversation with me. Someone gets in the car, tells me where they want to go, and they're quiet.
Yeah.
And we've lost that art of good conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very different because you're juniors people. Junior knows you. So usually because we're in Florida, either we both know the people or I know the people. And this is really interesting. But for me, after 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, this is a great person. This is a great person. We're all very different individuals. But it's so important to connect.
It really is.
I would love to hear your perspective locking in to exactly what you were saying, in that we all do want to connect, but you think we are so blinded by how we're running because COVID happened and we transitioned. I felt like there was no grace period for us to figure out how to move from that point to the other.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've now gotten to this space where we're blindly running like this. So when people are coming closer, we're like, wait. And as they get in closer, your hands start to draw in. How much of that you think on a daily basis you experience in seeing the reality of people being so much like this and slowly coming on in and realizing that that's exactly what we kind of need?
So you look like you have something you want to say.
I mean, I've thought about it in terms of just how much COVID did change just how people interact within each other. Because I actually, it was funny, I was on the subway with some friends today, and it was I look down and I see the footprints where you're supposed to stand, the 6 feet, and it's you see it's like a relic in history. You see literally these spots, and it's there was a time where you would go out and I never thought we would live in an era where masks weren't going to be a thing again.
Yeah.
And it's and you're right, there wasn't really any buffer period to where it wasn't a slow unveiling. It felt this was the way of life and this is how it's going to be. And then next thing you know, it's like
no longer.
nothing ever happened. And like, but from a mental perspective, I think there's still like that gradual of like letting people back, like making communities, I guess, whole again. I feel like the biggest thing I like that helps is just good faith. I feel like in terms of the intentions that you're coming when you're, especially if you're, when I have like, again, I'm in a world where my beliefs are my beliefs and I'm already like trained to think anything outside of that is evil. Coming to like what I'm expecting, like the analogy that I was thinking of is just like, I'll see videos where like it's a dog who is like it's a stray dog and you can see they're scared, like they're in a corner and like they're snapping at you. And it's like, it takes time, but the person is coming like with good intentions. And it's like, they're not letting up from that first snapback. Like, it's like, I'm not running away from it. So I'm not shying away from this conversation. I'm not shying away from this interaction, but I'm coming from a place of love, a place of like genuine, like I want to understand, and a place like genuine good intentions. And you see eventually that like the chemistry within like a person, the animal, their brain, like it changes, and then you see the hands start to kind of come down.
Do you think that that could be a little bit of herd mentality?
Oh yeah.
That after COVID, we started to see everybody like this, and then we started to allow people back in, but only the people that we see necessary. And now politically, culturally, we've never been so divided in every single way. Even now between genders, we're completely like dividing. And there's this phenomenon. I mean, I just keep going back to history because really we just keep repeating it.
We do.
Exactly, of herd mentality. If we think we're right and we're so, strong in our conviction that it doesn't matter that it might hurt this person or this group of people, but still we are achieving the right thing through herd mentality, we're thinking this way. Look at the things that we've been capable of. But even more than that, look at what we're walking into right now. We are dividing. We're dividing boys and girls. We're dividing races again. We're dividing religions again. I mean, and then there's like complete atheism. So why? Like, how do we step it back? So we don't know each other except me and Junior, or you guys and Junior. But as a 4 people sitting here today, we've never sat down and had a conversation. So it can be as real and authentic as we possibly can, without any rehearsal. What are
feel
we
like
doing wrong?
I think ironically, it goes back to like, again, humans wanting that community. So it's like, it used to be, I felt overall before it got so polarizing where it was a lot more inclusive, or inclusive was more like the thing, and like being able to like acknowledge someone's personhood or humanity, even if like we have different cultures or different things. Where now it's still, I feel like it's still that base of a longing to want to belong to something. And I feel like there's nothing stronger, like there's no better feeling of belonging to like, these are my people. And like you're either for or against, and the people are against are trying to break down what we have. And it makes me feel even closer and want to ride for my people. And it's like just a constant, I guess, snowball. And again, I think the climate, I feel like it genuinely stemmed it started with the political climate, and then it's starting to seep into everything else because it sells, I think, in this day and era. Like, and it's because everything is so black and white, but like it's still like that high mentality. I feel like it's still just that wanting to belong to a community and wanting to feel attached to something, and to have like, it gives me like meaning, because I feel like I'm fighting for something that I feel is right, that I've been confirmed that is right.
So having a common enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
Keeps that hive together.
Gets that hive nice and humming.
Think about when America was at its strongest. It was the Cold War, right?
Yeah.
It had a common enemy.
Exactly.
So, you think about American Pride and all the movies, right? And as someone from a country where the bad guy is often South African, it's like, remember every bad guy in the movies was probably from Eastern Europe or something. America had a common enemy, and that bound it together. I think your points on community are really interesting, and something I've been thinking about a lot. We often are fighting against something, but isn't there an opposite of that? Can't we fight for something instead of against?
That's what I was.
And I think about that with disease states, like the battle, like, it's the battle against cancer, like blah, 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 or whatever it may be, or let's fight language as opposed to unite language. And I far prefer the language of like love versus hate, to go back to sort of its correlation with fear. I do think what's happened with, I think community and belonging are going to be what saves us all. I think the challenge is sometimes a community can feel like unreachable. So one thing I've been thinking about is community can be created at multiple levels, right?
Yeah.
And I think about, I'm going to use a New York example, so sorry for the South Florida folks and folks elsewhere, but I live in, obviously, Park Slope, and I love my neighborhood, and I also sort of love Brooklyn, and I think about living in Brooklyn. I'm a Brooklynite. And then I was here during 9/11, and man, was I, proud of the response and being a New Yorker. And then something like the Olympics happens, or I would say World Cup soccer, but the U.S. is not where it needs to be. So let's just say the Olympics. then you're like an American, right? And community is like forged at different levels, and you can have pride at different levels, right? And you're a member of each of those communities. And this is a question for you in fitness, because this has been something I've thought about, which is like even fitness is a powerful community. I think about the community you built during COVID, right? But the defining characteristics, because we couldn't meet in person, right? So you put together a group of folks my age and like 20 or a couple 14, right? I mean, like literally we had people of all ages who would meet either outside to do stuff together or be in a call. And it was what I think kind of saved us during COVID. But that's because you created an inclusive environment. One of the things I've been thinking about with community is because everything's monetized, and this can go back to all of your creators. With fitness, all the boutique storefronts are for someone with a specific income level and a specific sort of like psychographic profile. And what I love about a place like the Y, for example, is it's from babies to seniors, right? Everyone can see themselves there, and everyone can belong. But those places, everyone learns to swim there, everyone learns to, and that's how communities become well and whole, to your point. But there's so few of those places because I'm going to pay like, $800 a month or whatever to go be with people who look really good and look like me. And I think that creates division too. And, I think a lot of this is because of how things are monetized as opposed to like inclusion and belonging, right? Which is what we need, but not always as easy to monetize, right?
Yeah.
So many big up. Thank God. So good. There is something that I'm thinking about, and I do agree with you that we should come from a space as it relates to community as what are we fighting for rather than against, because I feel like that is the echo chamber of what community is in a lot of our brains, is like we have to gather together to fight against something. And that is such a good way to kind of flip the reality in saying, hey, how about we fight for something?
Yeah.
And one could probably say a lot of communities are fighting for something, quote unquote. But the reality is you get up every day fighting against.
Every day.
Every day you fighting.
And we're tired.
Against and against and against. And it becomes so repetitive and becomes unnecessary because we're not in the driver's seat. And it feels like we're knocking on a door that never gets open.
That's right.
How do we kind of shift the focus? And to the point of like Y and the YMCA and other boutique fitness, I think shame is a root of a lot of things too. I think fear is a seed and shame becomes the root. A lot of people gravitate towards certain things to either make themselves feel better or not deal with the shame that they think they have.
Yeah.
You want to get a part of a group because I want to look like them and I won't feel so bad trying to achieve that. So the shame of it all won't be something that I have to settle with every single day. Shame is such a crippling idea. And if we had shame anywhere in our lives, whether it's financially, whether it's relation, whether it's
Physically.
physique, it doesn't matter. Once we have that, it is a crippling effect. And that is a dividend of fear, right? We all fear that we don't belong somewhere. We all fear of the idea of dying, which is probably why people are running away from someone having a chronic illness.
That's
because
right.
almost a face value that it's like, wow, this could happen to anyone. This is a young child and this is what she's experiencing. This could happen to. So people try to run from things that allows them to feel shameful about it.
Yeah.
So at what point to the idea of shifting the conversation on community for fighting for something rather than against, do we understand that we just need to let go of the shame, talk about the things that we are shameful of,
Yeah.
confess it one to another, and from a biblical perspective, because I am Christian and
Yeah.
I don't lead with that, but it is a known thing about me.
Yeah, it's very important too.
The Bible says, like, confess your sins one to another. And
Yeah.
let's remove the idea of sins and talk about shame. What it is that you have grown up with that is so shameful that you can't talk about, that forces you into this mentality of trauma, that so much so you go into community and places trying to hide the shame. And that's why we start fighting against things, because we're trying our hardest for no one to see the shame, no one to see this thing that we're blocking. So we find community to make sure that, like, we can solve it. It's hidden.
Well, I think that the result of exactly what you're saying. So speaking about cancer, this particular family, I accompanied them from Florida to Memorial Sloan Kettering because they had to have a meeting there. And I was on the pediatric floor. That could have been, after my children, the most life-altering day of my life. Watching the struggle of the patients and the families and the how alone they all felt sitting there in a room receiving news that they don't want to receive. And maybe another seed to plant is how much through our shame and fear that we're hurting other people by not being somebody that they can lean on in those moments. Yes, I'm sorry. It can happen to anyone. Cancer cells, literally, I mean, it's a cell that goes wrong, right? Or like Lou Gehrig's disease. Nobody's done anything wrong. It's, you know, our unclean water, our air that we're breathing, our bodies are fighting all the time. Again, a theme here is that we keep fighting. We're either fighting for or against something, but we're fighting. Humanity is a struggle. It's biblically a struggle. It's, in living and breathing and eating and working, we're struggling. So if we understand maybe the loneliness that people felt, just like we feel in moments where we're pretending and we're trying to get away from something, if we just recognize, if we stop and we say, wait, what's going on by me staring at my phone all the time and not making a connection? Because this is good. I'm enjoying this. You know what I mean? This is far better than me like flipping through whatever. I really don't do social media. Sorry. And whatever. But if I have to, whatever platform, I like now knowing you. It's been like a privilege to get to know you. And I didn't know you before. But if I hadn't had this moment, I just would have spent my time on like, okay, I do words with friends. Fine. If I spent it would have been a media that, I got 102 tweet word every once in a while. That happens. But this is fantastic. And then just knowing that somebody else is struggling or fighting out there, but maybe like now I have a connection in this world that I might be able to lean on, or somebody would be there for me, or at least understand. Maybe if we just continue to remember that is the common ground, that we all are actually just struggling, maybe we'll stop fighting each other.
Yeah. It's hard for people to remove their shame.
Yeah.
It's very hard for people to remove their shame.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could scream, shout, podcasts, teach classes, do all the things, but shame is a really, really hard thing for people to remove.
Yeah.
By no means is it easy. And I think it is within our best interest to like create spaces that people can say those things and not feel judged and not feel unwanted after that and not feel segregated or pushed and I don't want to toot a horn of mine, but I always go into spaces no matter who, what, where, or what is happening. I always want people to know that, like, I'm looking at you. I see you far beyond what you're probably thinking. And those spaces are some of the best spaces, AKA we had a beautiful experience over COVID.
It was honestly like really
It wasn't
special.
just a workout. We had days where we just got on Zoom and just talked. We just talked for an hour or two. And that helped so much to hear from a 14-year-old and her dad. To hear
Yeah, we're there together.
Oh, let's
We've heard from so many different perspectives, and that allowed us to like be more of we than me. I
Yeah.
think removing shame removes the me, and that's for a lot of people hard for them to hear.
Yeah.
They can't remove themselves from it because we are the advertising of what the world is promoting right now. They
Yeah.
want us to be about us and me and me. Is it about me? Is it about me? So to remove your shame means you're removing yourself. Because now, what else are you going to be stressed about? Now you really have to sit down and do this. We are able to do this because we're so much into the world for us rather than me. Does that make sense? So it's easy for us to say these things, but to the listeners and to the general public, like, we have to figure out a way to kind of help them say, hey, it's okay to remove yourself. It's also okay to lift the shame. Say the things that are on your heart, that are hurting, that are burning. Sickness is a shame for some people because they feel like they're to be blamed, whether it's how they eat or how they did fitness. You know, it's shameful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And this is why it's such a ministry for me to create space to make sure that, hey, I know you're in a bad place and that's okay, but together we could lift this, we could get beyond that. And that goes to a men and woman communication, right? A woman is so much easier, and I'm not trying to gender separate, but I'm trying to gender understand. A woman is so much easier to express certain things and how she feels and how she expresses, whereas a man is like, you're getting too close. You're getting too close, and that's why relationships are so hard, right? We have to deal with this gender dynamic as well, and then on top of it, we have to deal with the seed of fear and the root of shame, and lifting that, and then coming to a common ground of saying, you know, I'm wrong. I'm so wrong in what I do, and I'm gonna accept that. It's so hard.
I think it's very hard for a lot of people to admit they're wrong. I think that is the one thing, that's the one thing I've noticed in terms of particularly gender dynamics, I think, and how people communicate. And I think obviously everyone's different, and I'm just very careful, as you noted, not to paint broad strokes. But I do think one thing that I've seen is that women generally are trying to tell you how they feel. And a lot of interactions I've had is the response is, I don't really want to talk about it. Like, let's just move on. And sometimes we will apologize, but we also need to hear that our feelings are acknowledged.
Wow.
And that doesn't happen. So then what happens is resentment builds up because you're trying to say, this is how I feel. Can you hear me? And it's like, okay, we had the conversation, it's over. Like, and then the perception is women are bringing it up over and over again. But we haven't had someone say, I hear you. So we're trying to sort of ensure it's heard. And that, I think, is at the root of a lot of gender dynamics and where there's some tension. And I think part of it may be sort of how we're all raised, and men being told that they shouldn't be expressive. Now, I think there are some men who are incredibly expressive, but the gender norms, you know, and I worry about, we've got young boys. I've got a 15-year-old, you've got a 16 and 14-year-old, right? Especially having grown up primarily during COVID, that is perpetuated. I mean, You look at all the stuff with some of the like voices that are on social, right? And you look at Andrew Tate was just released, right? Like all these voices that are perpetuating really negative points of view about women. I think that's also created some of the degradation. But going back to some of the themes we've been talking about, I think if hate, if shame, if social isolation, polarization are let's not say enemy, are the disease, and the antidote is community, right? Yeah. And I think that starts by connecting to self, whether it's shame or trauma, whatever it is. It's connecting to a higher purpose, whether it's faith, whether it's your job, whether it's the love of your life, whatever it is. And then most importantly, connecting to each other. And I think that is going to be the antidote to everything we've been talking about. But I think we all have to work collectively to get people to understand that it's about connecting to self, to, ourselves or our potential, our purpose, and each other. And that's going to be key.
Absolutely. Authentically, too.
Authentically.
You mentioned Andrew Tate, which,
Ugh.
Okay, right. So so I'm a moderate, as I was saying. I'm really trying to live my life with a little, and I try to understand each and every side. So living in Palm Beach, I have had a very unique life. I've gotten to meet a lot of celebrities. I had not met Andrew Tate. I have my thoughts. I'm going to be honest. Some of the stuff that he says sits on this side of the scale, and I'm like, okay, I can see how I might feel that way. But to be able to feel that way doesn't mean that men have to push women down. And for a woman to feel this way doesn't mean that we have to push men down. And I feel like, and this is the theme of pretty much the things that I say on the podcast, is as human beings, we're not great with balance. We live our life a little bit unbalanced, right? Like people have a hard time with like personal work. Everybody's just a little bit off kilter, and that's when things start to feel off, and connecting to yourself really ends up being the only answer, right? Or your spirituality or whatever, but that is still connecting to yourself. Someone like that isn't necessarily wrong about everything that he says. What's wrong is when we start to degrade somebody else for our benefit. So you can't like human traffic people. You can't, go to a different country and treat women in a way that's completely,
But that's what makes it wrong, though.
Correct.
I think that's what throws everything.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. So, but
Not good faith.
Yeah.
To your earlier point.
It doesn't matter what you say, whether it's rooted in this is a lot of why faith and Christ get so discombobulated, because a lot of people use that as a driving force to do the things that they do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your faith is, what your experience is. If you are saying something that is truthful, but it's driven by this idea of hate, and everything you said completely dismissed, because there should be no rhyme or reason for you to speak a truth, and it is completely negative in a way that it tears someone else apart.
That's right.
That's not community anymore.
No, that's not community.
That's an agenda that you're pushing.
We can't have it be at the expense of other people. Just for women to be able in the workplace, for a while it worked really well when women entered the workplace, and we were a more balanced place. Not always fair, but more balanced. But all of a sudden now it seems like no matter what, for somebody to get on top, we have to push somebody else down. And even though that might be slightly human nature, we're competitive by nature, you have to understand that the person being pushed down is going to at some point rise up. Like, that's just history as well. Well, I've not seen anybody in this world, a group of people, that's been pushed down for so long that they do not eventually rise up.
I mean, if we want to put it out there, there's a race situation where Black people has still not recovered from all the things. You could say there are a small percentage of Black people who have excelled, but we're talking about majority here. So there are some group of people that are oppressed and stayed oppressed. I would love to see a redemption song happen. Come on, Bob Marley. But the truth is, it's just some people just don't recover, and we're talking about years of slavery, that slavery has shifted to a different POV. Then a new era comes in and slavery has shifted to a different POV. But I honestly don't want to make this a race thing, but there are groups of people that have been oppressed that have stayed oppressed throughout time.
Well, history hasn't finished.
So, Lord,
We have time coming up. They're gonna rise up.
I hope.
Well, but I think to your point, like look at BLM, right? Black Lives Matters. There was a sense that there was a rise, and then it was quickly shoved and kicked down. And so I think one of the things is this pendulum swing we've been talking about that happens in history.
Yeah.
And I think it's like funny. It's actually on every level. If you've been following all this stuff with Netflix and Paramount and the acquisition of Warner, I'm like, isn't this cable again? You know what I mean? It's like we had cable and all our channels were in a box. Then we went to streaming and all these individual, and now these conglomerates are like fighting over like acquisition and getting everything under one brand again. But this is like the truth of how things are. We bundle and then unbundle. We rise up and then we're pushed down. I do think people rise, but I think they're, and I think actually I've been thinking about this a lot, this conversation around fear and shame. Like if you look at even the history of like apartheid in South Africa and Cecil B. Rhodes, who was like an architect of it, he was actually like a very sickly man, like physically.
Really?
But he went to a country and a continent where he felt like he could have power and strength. And you think about, obviously, Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, all of it, his entire vision for Africa was obviously extractive because he was physically weak, but he grew strength by putting other people down. And that goes, I mean, it's a really fascinating story.
The stuff that's come out recently.
Bingo.
But, you know, I mean,
Yes.
it's
right?
more shame, it's more fear, and then people are
Then power.
and power.
And it goes on all levels. It goes as small as men and women communication.
Well, and the dynamics between, and the power, right? So
power dynamics.
it starts to get calibrated and then we're going to push you down again. I mean, I don't know what it's like for you, but I have to say, having worked in business for a long time, you know, treated as equals. And now I can see sort of a rollback, and I can imagine it happens. It certainly happens on a whole host of other dimensions, right? I mean, yeah, it's human nature.
It is human.
It's the pendulum swing, but it's the both and is going to be key.
I think the major hurdle of shame, though, is especially in this day and age and with social media, and we were kind of talking about it before we actually started the pod, just with the high mentality of social media, shame is heavily weaponized now.
That's
I'd say like
so
to
true.
an era like that it's never been before.
You're right.
And it's like, and people will use that, like say it's all stemming from fear, but now like shame is being used as like a driver to either manipulate a group into doing whatever they're trying to do or put a group down. Exactly.
Okay, so that signals. That signals, and appropriately, something that we decided to do, and it was your idea, and we take the stairs, is what we take from the conversation. So to end it all, because, you know, the conversations that we have are really kind of open-ended questions. You could keep going and going, but the truth is, it's just important to have conversation like this. So everybody sort of goes around, if you don't mind participating, and says, you know, this is what I take from this conversation. And so...
So it's called a We Take, in the essence of us discussing about community, and communication and how that kind of breaks down. I know specifically we're talking about male and female gender dynamics, but this kind of catapulted into something that was far more important than just the basics of men and women. And I think it created a great conversation. So I would love to hear everyone's We Take. It's just a blurb of specifically what you've taken from this conversation that could help you personally, personal agenda, or you as a community and people around you.
Yeah. Are we saying it like a small slogan, or we like can elaborate?
Dig deep.
Okay. Beautiful. Or yeah, if you want to, and also I can see how it is.
Go first.
Because I'm a rambler.
No, you're not. You're a great conversationalist. So my wee take is that, it's pretty much similar. When I had the idea for the podcast, I just wanted to start to hear what other people had to say because I live in my own head, right? So I know what I think, but to be able to make change, we have to understand how other people think. So my wee take is that these conversations are growing to be more and more important as we can't trust what we see anymore. I mean, when you can put somebody's face on AI on a body that's not theirs and they can do something else, or take a picture and turn it into a whole scene, we're having to question everything. The only thing that we really can't question is a conversation that we have with each other. So conversations are actually, I hope, going to start being a trend again, because we have all these bizarre trends that we're all following that sort of die off. But conversation and communication is the key to a society that's going to work, or a relationship that's going to work. So, but the society really is just a bunch of relationships, isn't it? So first, thank you guys for being on here today. But my wee take is that conversation is even more vital than I started out thinking that it was. And conversation with people who don't think exactly like you, or don't come from your state, or because we're in the great city of New York, or come from your city, or your race, or your religion, or ethnicity, whatever. It's important to talk to everyone, to people, and to have respect through that communication.
My wee take is, I think I got so many good little tabs from this conversation, and respectfully, you guys have given me very deeper meaning to things, and I thank you guys so much for coming on and chopping it up, especially at last minute, guys.
I'll invoice you later.
But for me, I think what I've gotten from this conversation is that the seed of fear will drive the root of shame. And it is very imperative that no matter on what level, whether it's a male or female dynamic, whether it's a work relationship or whatever it is, a conversation is needed and a community is warranted. It's okay to have a single off conversation, but it's also important to have a group community, someone that could see both sides, but also understand from a perspective where, yes, someone is wrong, yes, someone is right, but we can admit that, understand where we're coming from, and move forward. And I think that's exactly what happened here, because though we didn't even get to dig deep into our faiths or beliefs or cultural background or different hurt or trauma, we were able to see different point of views, understand it, even from a one-on-one conversation, but like come into a community and really dive in. And I'm sure there are a lot of things that we go, well, you know what, that perspective of mine was probably wrong based on this conversation. And we could admit that to ourselves and grow from it. So that for me is what my retake is.
I'm next.
I'll let you finish because you probably have the best point. All right, so my wee take is, and we hit it in the very beginning. I think from just the essence of being a human, we all want the same thing. So with that, like, the intention is the most important thing in terms of trying to understand somebody. I have to trust that, like, your intentions are to genuinely want to understand me, and there's not an ulterior motive. Like, it goes back to, again, just good faith. Like, I feel like the first step to being able to build any sense of whole community, or being able to have differences but still being able to be together, is understanding that we all want the same thing, and we might go about it in different ways, and that's okay. And it's like, as long as me getting whatever drives me as a human is not belittling or taking anything away from you, being able to be okay with that. Like, they are just doing it the way that they see fit. But at the end of the day, we're all coming to the same destination.
Yeah. Table.
I was thinking sort of as my takeaway very similarly, where I wonder a lot because you've talked a lot about faith today and how important it is to you. And you can also look at the patterns around sort of organized religion and how few people are joining churches, mosques, synagogues.
Yeah.
And, whatever your faith, there are shared values that travel with organizations. And I think, building on your point, I think, finding those shared values, but respecting what's different. I think finding that common ground, but respecting how you, sort of stand on it may be different. Or I think that's really important. And just sort of realizing that we do all want to belong. I think we all want to be seen. I think we all want to be supported, and we do want to belong. And one of the things that struck me from our conversation today is you all make really good eye contact. Do you notice how many times you have a conversation with people and they don't actually look at you? And that's sort of being the power of connection and conversation, and ultimately what we've been talking about, community and cohesion, which will affect change, which is I'm connecting with you, I'm connecting with you, I'm connecting with you, and we're connecting together. And I think we're all doing so in good faith, to your earlier point, right? And I think that gives me hope. I haven't felt a lot to be hopeful about, but that gives me a lot of hope. So I want to say thank you for inviting us to be a part of your family today.
Yeah.